Hey everyone, Rob here from the SnapCast with another quick deck tech, and today we have Burn. Alright, so Burn is probably one of the most recommended decks for anybody first getting into Modern. A couple reasons for it. One, it's cheap. Two, pretty easy to pilot. Okay, and three, it does a really good job at spiking events too, and I really can't even call it spiking because Burn is just a really good deck in general. Okay, it's a good solid tier 1.5. Some may put it down into tier 2, but it is a good deck and has put up results time and time again. And it's just as long as you can get that good trail up in the top 8, the deck it almost performs on its own. So again, what we're going to do, if you're new to this is a beginner deck breakdown. We're just going to break down this deck for those who are new to the Modern format and show you a little bit about what the deck is about, the different spells associated with it, and talk a little bit about each card and how you're going to want to play it. So we're going to go through the creatures first. You'll notice this deck, unlike some of the other ones that are a little bit more on the hyper-aggressive side, has a few more creatures. Okay, we've got 14 total creatures. All of them, though, are very powerful and very needed for this deck. So first we're going to start off with 2 copies of Grim Lavamancer. Grim Lavamancer is a 1-drop human wizard. It's a 1/1. And for a red and tap him, you can exile 2 cards from your graveyard. Grim Lavamancer deals 2 damage to target creature or player. Okay, that has been errated to be any target. So with that, okay, Grim Lavamancer, sure, you can attack with him, but with the amount of spells that we have and the fetch lines that we also have in our 19 card mana base, it's not difficult for you to start abusing him on turn 2 if you're able to get him out. He's really good for controlling creatures and also just getting a little bit more damage to that planeswalker, getting a little bit more damage to that opponent to keep dwindling them down. And also, it's just a blocker. Different things you can do with them too. So when you go to declare a blocker, remember you can still activate any abilities associated with them. So you can have him block a 3/3 and kill it, or an X3 creature and kill it because of his ability to deal 2 damage to that creature, and then the 1 from him. Or if you wanted to deal that damage elsewhere, or if you wanted to get rid of another attacking creature and you're blocking a 1/1, you can do that. So just be mindful that he has that ability, and you can send that ability across the board. Okay, our next 1-drop creature here, Goblin Guide. Goblin Guide is one of the most beneficial creatures in this deck. I would say the most powerful creature out of all 14 that we run. And he's a 2/2 with haste for 1 mana. And a little bit of downfall if you will, is whenever he attacks, defending player reveals top card of his or her library. If it's a land, they put it in their hand. So, it could help them out with draws, getting past land pits and that, which is not great, but it also lets you see what they have, what you're running against. If it's game 1 and they haven't played anything yet, you could see a crucial piece of their puzzle, or you could see a crucial creature. And then it might determine how you're going to utilize your wealth of burn spells down here, because we have 27 of them, and how exactly you want to deploy them. Monastery Swiftspear, definitely another fantastic 1-drop creature we have here. It's a 1-drop for a 1/2 with haste, and she has prowess. For those who don't know what prowess means whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So she gets more powerful as you cast more spells. You could do that too in response to a removal. So if something gives it -2/-2, or if they try to deal 3 damage to it, you can chain off a couple of spells, make her more powerful, and now she gets to live. And then the last of our creatures here, Eidolon and the Great Revel. Eidolon the Great Revel is just great for locking out your opponents. If you can play him on turn 2, this is 9 times out of 10 probably going to be your turn 2 play. So he's a 2-drop, 2/2. Whenever a player casts a spell with converted mana cost 3 or less, Eidolon the Great Revel deals 2 damage to that player. Remember, it's whenever a player. So it can target you. So just be mindful of that. It can be detrimental to your life total, but depending on the matchup you're in, it also could be very beneficial for you. On one of my variants of Jund Burn, I had Eidolon the Great Revel and Campbell Council of Authorities out, and my opponent would be losing 4 life every time they cast a spell, and I would be gaining 2 if it was CMC 3 or less. Alright, so now let's get into our spell base here. So we've got Lightning Bolt. I've talked about Lightning Bolt before. Okay, if you're in red, you should be running 4 copies of Lightning Bolt. 1-drop, deal 3 damage to any target at instant speed. Next up, we have Lava Spike. Very similar to Lightning Bolt, but it is 1 sorcery speed and 2 target player. This can't go to a creature. You can't go to a Planeswalker. That was a recent rules change. And sadly, yeah, we can't redirect that damage to a Planeswalker. So it's it's 3 damage to target player. And that's it for our 1-drops. You can kind of argue, I'll go ahead and cover this one here, Rift Bolt. You can argue that Rift Bolt is a 1-drop because it does have the suspend mechanic. Okay, it is normally a 3-drop sorcery, 2 in a red, and deals 3 damage to any target at sorcery speed. But it has suspend 1, so it gets 1 time counter, and it only costs 1 mountain to suspend it. For those who don't know what suspend is, rather than cast this card from your hand, you may pay 1 red and exile it with a time counter on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter. When the last time counter is removed, cast it without paying its mana cost. Okay. Now you have to track something else. There are different ways you could go about tracking. You can put a die on top of your deck to let you know, hey, there's something you need to do before you draw that card. Or, some other kind of reminder. Write down a note on a piece of paper, hey, this. But generally the die on top of the deck is the universal reminder of, I have an upkeep trigger I need to take care of. And suspending Rift Bolt on turn 1 is a very good play. Also suspending it on 2, so Monastery Swiftspear can abuse its prowess mechanic, is also a good play too. So let's get to our 2-drops then. So our first ones we're going to cover here is Skullcrack. Skullcrack is a 2-drop instant shock, or instant bolt, kind of. And it states that players can't gain life this turn. This is really good to do in response to anything that causes your opponent to gain life, whether it's Timely Reinforcements, or it's Obstinate Baloth, Pulse of Marassa, the slew of life gain spells, or even Lifelink. And because one of the worst things as a burn player that you can start to deal with is your opponent gaining life. The deck is meant to win on turn 4, turn 5, and then it goes into top deck mode. During that time, you really want to make sure that it's only 1 spell you need, and hopefully not more than that. Otherwise, it's probably not going to look too great for you to end up getting that W. Lightning Helix. So Lightning Helix is a red and a white, and it deals 3 damage to target creature or player, and then you gain 3 life. So again, that's any target at instant speed is going to take 3 damage, and then you get to gain 3. Really good too for holding this up for combat tricks, if you will. During combat, being able to cast a Lightning Helix to take you above what your opponent thinks is lethal, and you to be able to deal 3 damage to them. Another 2-drop here, we got Boros Charm. Okay, Boros Charm mainly used for its first line, but don't forget there are 2 other lines when it comes to Boros Charm. So Boros Charm is a red and a white, instant speed, choose 1, deal 4 damage to target player. It's the most common thing you're going to see it used for. Permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So if you need to protect your board, say you got a couple of Goblin Guides and like an Eidolon out, and your opponent wants to kill them and you do have Boros Charm in hand, it won't be wrong to give them indestructible because you're now conserving 2, 4, 6 power on board instead of just dealing 4 damage. So there is that aspect of it. And then its last one, target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Occasionally you can use this to boost up your Monastery Swiftspear to just overpower whatever they're going against. Very quickly your Monastery Swiftspear can be going from a 4/4 to a 4/5 to a 5/6 with double strike, or even any other combination. So you definitely get in more damage. That's really where you're going to want to use it, as if you can get it from a 4/5 to a 5/6. Because otherwise, you might as well just deal 4 damage with the instant speed itself. And then you have Searing Blaze. Searing Blaze, it's 2 mountains, instant speed, deal 1 damage to target creature, 1 damage to target player, and 1 damage to target creature that player controls. So you target the player and you target the creature. Again, most of the time you'll see players, whenever they play it, they'll point at the creature, point at the player, but it goes to both. Now, one thing that makes this better, because you're thinking 2 mountains for 1 and 1, that's not great. It has landfall, so if a land entered the battlefield under your control this turn, Searing Blaze deals 3 damage to that player and 3 damage to that creature instead. So now you just took it from being like a gut shot that goes both ways to a shock or a lightning strike or a lightning bolt that goes both ways, which is very beneficial. Things to remember though, okay, needs landfall for that. So be careful with your fetches. Normally we like to play this on our opponent's turn whenever they go for an attack or in response to maybe a pump spell or a creature entering the battlefield to get a +1/+1 counter, however it may be. So you got to be careful about how you fetch and obtain your lands that way. Another thing too is some opponents don't fully understand that upon casting, that's when you need the valid targets. So some will say that whenever you go to cast it, you target them, you target their creature, and then they can sack their creature. And then they try to say the spell fizzles because it doesn't have a legal target. Upon casting, a legal target existed, so the spell does resolve, and your opponent will still take 3 damage, even though there's no creature on the board to receive 3 damage, since they exiled it or destroyed it in some means or fashion. When it comes to burn, a tricky thing to remember is it's not always about straight to the face, turn creature sideways. Sometimes you need to eliminate their creature base. So you need to be mindful of that when it comes to decks like spirits and humans and company decks. Elves. You want to make sure that you're preventing them from getting too out of control. Very quickly, with all the lord effects that exist in humans and spirits, their ability to have incredibly powerful creatures that now you can't do anything about becomes very, very high. Sometimes too, you may need to bait out different counter spells, and that when it comes to your control matchups, that's okay. We all have to do it in one way or another. But if it's to get in better spells or to get in a better creature, maybe that is needed. Okay, so that's the main board for it. Again, it's a pretty simple deck. Overall for this deck, you're probably looking at about $450 to $600 depending on the land package you run, the fetches that you run. It can misrepresent if someone has Scalding Tarns in their as part of their fetches. You don't need Scalding Tarns. The main ones you need are Arid Mesas, and then really you can have any other red fetch. Now, if you're splashing for other colors, then you may want to include a fetch or two of that. So maybe like Bloodstained Mire if you're splashing black, or Wooded Foothills if you're going to splash green. So let's go ahead and get into our sideboard now. Okay, and this is just some of your typical sideboard. Sorry, not all of my cards are sleeved. I just rummaged through this to get this together. Recently had this one rented out. All right, so we have in our sideboard, we have 2 copies of Exquisite Firecraft. Exquisite Firecraft is fantastic for your control matchup. It deals 4 damage to any target, and if you have Spell Mastery, that is 2 or more instant or sorceries in your graveyard, then it can't be countered by spells or abilities. So that's just 4 damage going to the face for 3 mana. Generally, we like to be more efficient with that, but you know, the ability for it to be uncounterable outweighs everything. Wear and Tear. Okay, this is a great card here out of Dragon's Maze. You can cast 1/2 of the card, or you can cast both halves. Okay, if you cast both halves, you have to pay both costs. But the main thing we're doing with this is destroying target enchantment. Sure, we can destroy target artifact, but generally though, it's going to be the enchantment removal that we really need to take care of, because cards like a Leyline of Sanctity really hose us. And you want to make sure you have a way to get rid of those, so then you're not just dead on board to them playing a turn 0 Leyline of Sanctity. And then of course any other troublesome artifacts that you may run into, you could possibly use that for as well. Deflecting Palm is really good against like big creature decks, or anything that can cast a very powerful spell that deals a lot of damage. This one comes out of Konzatark here. It's red and white, instant speed. The next time a source of your choice would deal damage to you this turn, prevent that damage. If damage is prevented this way, Deflecting Palm deals that much damage to that source's controller. Key things to watch out for though is cards like Skullcrack, which reads, damage cannot be prevented this turn. Okay. You can't Deflecting Palm if there's a Skullcrack on the field, because technically you're preventing that damage. So you need to watch out for warding like that. But again, it's really good against big creatures. It non-bows a Wormcoil Engine hit. So if you're going against Tron and they go to swing a Wormcoil Engine, if you Deflecting Palm that, they gain 0 life, but they take 0 damage as well. And Snaring Bridge. A Snaring Bridge is a really good add. Some decks like to run 2, some like to run 3. It's a 3-drop artifact, and that's each creature with power greater than the number of cards in your hand cannot attack. Burn is a deck that runs on very few cards in hand, generally after turn 2, turn 3. So being able to have this on field and lock your opponent out from attacking you, very crucial. Rest in Peace. If you're in white, your sideboard should have Rest in Peace if it's not in the main. Rest in Peace, when it enters the battlefield, you exile all cards from graveyards, and then if a card or token would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. And this is key for a lot of your Dredge decks. Dredge is huge out there. Dredge Vine used to be really big. Revenge Vine was a really big deck. Hollow One, Is It Phoenix? Decks like those that want to play cards out of the graveyard now suffer to the Rest in Peace hate. Next up, we have Rakdos Charm. Rakdos Charm saw a lot of play back in the Splinter Twin era, and is really only starting to pick up now because we have a lot of creature decks that go wide. Okay, so Rakdos Charm, it's another one of the charms just like we had with Boros Charm. This one's a black and a red, so you're going to have to splash black if you want this build here. And we have, you can do a couple of Blood Crypts, a couple of Blackclay Cliffs. However you want to manage your black mana sources, you can do so in your 19. And if you look over at the side of ours, you can see how we managed ours. So it's instant speed, choose one. Exile all cards from target player's graveyard. So it's more graveyard hate if you need it. Or destroy target artifact, additional artifact hate, pretty good. And then the main thing that I've used it for, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. So if your opponent's gone wide, your Spirits player has 6-7 creatures out on board. Now you get to cast Rakdos Charm and deal 6 or 7 damage to them. Same with humans, Collected Company. Storm players, if they go on the Empty the Warrens, and they just want to make a whole bunch of goblins to try to kill you out that way, Rakdos Charm is very good against that. And then lastly, you have Searing Blood. So similar to Searing Blaze, Searing Blood though is right in the middle. So Searing Blood deals 2 damage to target creature. When that creature dies this turn, Searing Blood deals 3 damage to its controller. So it's going to deal 2 damage to the creature, and then if it dies, your opponent's going to take 3 damage. And we run 2 copies of that, and it's 2 red for an instant speed spell. Okay, again, your sideboard, you can put a whole bunch of different stuff in there if you want. Risk factor, some people have played with it. It's not performing too well. If you want more Rakdos Charms, you can do more Rakdos Charms. Like I said, Campbell, Authority of Consoles, Kari Zev's Expertise, Anger the Gods, potentially, if you really want to. There's a whole slew of different cards you can put into your sideboard. It's going to be game to your meta. If you don't know what your meta is, this is a great place to start. And again, like we always say, see what works, see what doesn't work, and go from there. All right, so now the moment I think most people have been waiting for. If you saw the first one, we're going to open up yet another pack here of Ultimate Masters. Okay, our first pull was pretty good. We ended up getting Gaddock Teeg, and I ended up learning the actual packing when it comes to the Ultimate Masters packs. So I now know where my commons are, I know where my uncommons are, all that good stuff. Okay, so I already know what my token is right here. See if we've got anything good. We've got an elemental token, not bad. And then we're going to go through the commons. God's Willing, Mirror Servitor. We got Nightbird's Clutches. We got Resurrection. Spider Umbra. It's good for boggles. Last Grasp. Pulse Marassa. Fate's Fetters. And I got 2 more here. Just the Wind. And we got Reckless Worm. Alright, so now we're on to the uncommons. Got Prismatic Lens. Not too terrible. Unburial Rites. And Dawn Charm. Alright. Let's see, for our foil, we have just a nice little Canker Abomination. And then, ooh, Cavern of Souls. Nice. Look at that. Now, granted, Cavern of Souls has plummeted in price, just like a lot of the other mythics and rares that we've seen here. Gaddock Teeg is actually only down to $10. Lore one is still $40, so that's good. And Cavern of Souls, what used to be a $100 card, is down in the $40 to $50 range right now. But still, 2 packs, 2 wonderful pulls, first mythic, and I'll be curious to see what we keep going. Thanks, everybody, for watching. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, please let us know in the comments down below. And be sure to hit that like and subscribe button too, so then you're notified whenever we put new videos up. We do more than just these deck techs. We've got a few play videos up, and we're looking at expanding our video library as well. You can also check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/thesnapcastmtg for all the latest and greatest content we have to offer, as well as www.thesnapcast.com. That is our main website. You can see us on Twitter at Team Snapcast, and you can also, if you would like to, check us out on the Patreon. We have our link down below, patreon.com/thesnapcast. Every month for our patrons, whether it's a $3 patron or upwards of $15 patron, whichever one you decide to choose. With all the added bonuses you get, you also have a chance every month to win a bundle of the current standard set. This bundle currently belongs to Tristan Bohaus out in Australia, so we'll be mailing that to him. But for your chance to do that, go ahead, check it out, see what tier you like, and go ahead and sign up for it. And again, we would like to thank all of our patrons that we have and all those that have helped us out in the process. But that's going to do it for us on this one. Stay tuned for more, and y'all have a great evening.